Some of you are confused about this fighting thing and my advice around it. Based on a few of the comments to my videos, the real reason men must learn how to fight and never back down, even if you know you'll lose. And if you're new here, the link to both of those are in the description. Some of you seem to erroneously think that I'm telling you that you need to get into fights. Never mind the fact that I explicitly state in both videos several times that escalating to physical violence should be a last resort. I blame the YouTube algorithm for forcing me to create titles and thumbnails that are designed to get people to click, and many of those people, unfortunately, aren't going to watch the entire video. It's okay though, because every little bit of engagement helps the video get pushed, and that means more people who will get the message and need to see the video will see it, even if that engagement is, and I'm giving it the nicest interpretation possible, reactive and with little thought. But hey, what are you going to do? Trolls, both of the mythical and internet variety, have never been known for their intelligence, only their looks or lack thereof, which explains why none of these commenters have a profile picture. However, those snap judgments did give me something to think about, and some other thoughtful comments helped. And it made me realize that I never gave you an avoidance or de-escalation plan to significantly reduce your odds of getting into a fight in the first place. For those of you new to the channel, I'm Ed Lattimore, former heavyweight boxer who was born and raised in the grimiest public housing projects in Pittsburgh, PA. In this video, I'm going to explain to you how to avoid violence in the street, what to do if you can't, and why even if you live in the suburbs and consider yourself above all of this, you still need to exercise a bit of caution to keep yourself from ever having to choose between being judged by 12 or carried by 6. Also, I'll tell you the 2 habits that will pretty much reduce your odds of ever being a victim of unprovoked violence to pretty much 0, but only if you stick around to the end. But let's get some out of the way first. You think you want to learn self-defense so you can defend yourself in the street against any attacker. And you're worried that if you can't, you'll be embarrassed and your girl will leave you and your kids will disown you. But let me tell you the truth of the matter. If you live in the United States, there's a good chance that someone has a gun anyway. And if it's anywhere else where guns aren't so easy to acquire, they might have a knife. And no amount of training makes you bullet or knife proof. Take the boxing classes for fun. Learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for fun. Get into a kickboxing or Krav Maga class for fun. But whatever you do, don't take it to puff yourself up for having a street fight, because the days of having hands are over. Now, when I was younger, people took pride in settling their differences over a fair one, but those days are long gone. Now you're more likely to get jumped, get a brick to the dome, or catch a bullet. I've got experience fighting in both the ring and in the streets, and while the two might seem similar, the big difference between them is that boxing is a sport with rules. Now, before we dive into all this, I want to give you something first that's going to help you develop the real mental toughness required to do a lot of these things. It's my free ebook, The 20 Hard Lessons from the Hurt Business. These are the same lessons that helped me go from the projects to professional boxing to a physics degree and beyond. The ebook doesn't just give you boxing lessons. Those are impossible to teach with a book anyway. What it gives you are the harsh life lessons I learned from the hurt business of boxing, alcoholism, and growing up in the hood. I survived it all and came out on the other end, but many people don't. The fighter's mindset gives you the game on conquering life's challenges that I had to pay a heavy toll to learn. Click on the pinned link in the comment to get your free copy. Now, let me tell you the truth about fighting in today's world. In boxing, there's respect between the opponents. Generally speaking, the two guys don't actually want to hurt one another. It just so happens that the conditions of victory are just to do that. In street fighting, there is no respect. There is no thinking. Street fights are no joke. Because there are no rules, it's easy to lose your life or become permanently incapacitated. On the flip side, if you're the winner of a street fight, then it's easy to find yourself facing serious jail time or retaliation. The step to avoiding street fights is to avoid places where they're most likely to happen. And you know where the problem spots are. Even if you aren't actively looking for trouble, you know there are certain environments where violence is more likely to occur. And unless you earn a living by being in those environments, and if you do, I strongly suggest you find that on the way, then avoid them. The usual places come to mind: clubs, bars, the hood, the block, pretty much any place with lots of alcohol and even more ego. Generally speaking, if it's more active at night or a place where criminals hang out or criminal activity goes down, avoid it. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, but sometimes, even if you avoid the places where trouble hangs out, trouble goes out looking for company and happens to cross your path. A few years ago, I was walking through a Best Buy parking lot in broad daylight in a not at all dangerous or sketchy part of town when I passed by this young thuggish looking dude and his provocatively dressed girlfriend. As we passed by one another, the dude looked at me and was like, "Yo, what the you looking at?" Apparently, He thought I was eyeballing his girl. Now I'm a married man. I've mastered the art of looking while not looking. And even if I wasn't, I've been around long enough to know that looking at another man's lady like she's what's on the menu is an invitation to get cooked. Now, this dude, intimidating as he looked to most civilians, was not scary to me in the slightest. I grew up in the projects next to a trap house, for goodness sakes. I didn't even know people could settle things without swinging fists until I was like 14 and I started going to a high school with middle and upper class white people. On top of that, the dude must have been like 5'8" and couldn't have weighed more than 170 pounds soaking wet. If a miniature dude built like a dope fiend is willing to talk to my big black ass like that, and for reference, I'm 6'1", 215 pounds, and I was fighting professionally, so I only had about 12% body fat on me, then he likely knew something about the balance of force that I didn't know, and that unknown variable was not in my favor. He looked like the kind of dude who had priors and didn't mind catching another case to show his young bird that he was about that life, so I kept it moving. I didn't even acknowledge him, because I knew that nothing good could come of that altercation. Even if he wasn't packing heat, the last thing I needed to deal with was proving that the aggravated assault I would have certainly been charged with was actually in self-defense. And while I can more than hold my own in a fist fight from my boxing training, my street training, I do not provoke them and I will not engage in them unless there is absolutely no choice. Which brings me to my next point about avoiding this type of trouble. There ain't no shame in running away. And I put emphasis on running. If you end up in one of these situations with the type of guy who wants to throw blows or more, then turning your back on him is only going to make him angrier. That's not just anecdotal or unscientific street smarts babble. Research has shown that the brain processes social rejection like being ignored in similar ways to how it processes physical pain. Meaning that on a neurological level, being ignored can feel like being hit, activating the same areas of the brain associated with physical pain perception. I've dropped a link to this research in the description just in case you want to make sure I'm not talking out my ass. So if you turn your back on a guy, you may as well just face him and hit him. At least that way you don't get sucker punched from behind. But really though, please run away and live to fight another day. Obviously, there are situations where you can't do that, like if you got your girl or your kids with you. But if it's just you and it looks like it's about to go down, take flight and don't look back until you're safely away. This is yet another reason that you should make sure physical fitness is a priority of yours. It's not so much about being in shape to fight as it is about being able to survive, and being able to run as fast and as long as you can away from dangerous situations is a big part of that. The other part of being able to survive is knowing how to de-escalate and diffuse dangerous situations. But before we get to that, we need to talk about not provoking a situation in the first place. Graveyards and prisons are full of people who couldn't control their emotions in a tenuous environment, and this extends beyond environments like a rough inner city ghetto. Road rage shootings are on the rise. Just because you're in a car doesn't mean you're safe. Data from the Gun Violence Archive found road rage shootings have gone up every year since 2018. Being in a motorized steel cage creates a false sense of security, making many people believe that they'll be fine flipping a finger or dropping a racial slur at someone in response to being cut off. Both of those things have happened to me, but I'm a sane dude with something to lose. But you never know how far someone will go to satisfy the urge to retaliate. In July 2022, right here in my hometown of Pittsburgh, PA, a driver was so angry at being cut off that he followed the man home and shot him on his front porch. Now, you can stop a lot of bad situations before they start with good manners and a sincere apology. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. As long as the person wasn't blatantly disrespecting you or attempting to harm you, let it go and keep it moving. Not only let it go, but respond with a simple "my bad." For those who don't speak hood, "my bad" is the equivalent of saying "I'm sorry." You bump somebody in a crowd, "my bad" goes a long way. Step on somebody's foot on a crowded bus, he might get bad, but you can often diffuse the situation just by saying "my bad." And the key is that when you say it, actually look and sound remorseful. Few things make a person angrier than a BS fake apology that lacks any tone of sincerity. This includes telling someone they're right or saying something like "whatever you say" with that tone that says they're obviously wrong. That's a type of passive aggression I warned you about in the other video where the link is in the description, and not everyone will remain passive in the face of it. Now look, I'm not saying that it's always easy or even appropriate to take the blame. All I'm saying is that if you find yourself on the business end of a beef, you've got to make a choice. Do you want to avoid a street fight that could turn ugly, or do you want to prove that you're right and get the last word in? This part right here isn't general advice about how to live your life. It's a specific strategy to get out of a bad situation before it turns worse. You never know who doesn't care about going to jail if they feel disrespected. One of Mike Tyson's most famous quotes is, "Social media has made y'all too comfortable with disrespecting someone and not getting punched in the face for it." As many people have argued with me in the comments and other parts of social media, most people aren't willing to get physical over words. And those people are right. Most people aren't interested in catching a charge because someone doesn't know how to communicate like an adult. But that's most people. You never know when you're dealing with someone who isn't one of those people. Always be polite and treat people with respect, even if they treat you with disrespect. In fact, I'd say especially if they treat you with disrespect, because those are the types of people with nothing to lose and a lot to gain by messing up your day. Back when the IRA tried to blow up former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and failed, they issued her a warning. Today we were unlucky, but remember, we only have to be lucky once. You will have to be lucky always. What's that have to do with treating folks with respect, you're wondering? Well, sure, it feels better to let some a-hole have it so they know that you aren't the one to talk to like that. But every time you do that, you have to keep getting lucky that they aren't the one to talk to like that either. And I know it's easy to dismiss physical retaliation to someone's bad attitude as something that only happens in the hood, the schoolyard, prisons, or wherever else you think you won't be because you're better than that. But a lot of the road rage I mentioned earlier on wasn't between two cats from the ghetto thugging it out on the freeway. Back in 2022, I don't know what it was about that year, in Portland, Oregon, one of the softest cities in America, wealthy businessman Jeffrey Hammond murdered a man in broad daylight during a road rage incident. The initial confrontation started over a perceived slight. One driver believed the other was not showing him proper respect by blocking traffic. The victim, Ryan Martin, pulled up behind him and tried to encourage Hammond to move. But the two exchanged middle fingers as Martin drove around Hammond, according to the arrest affidavit. Martin climbed out of his car and started tapping on Hammond's window. Hammond rolled down his window and shot the dude in the chest. Then, just to get his street cred all the way up, he shot a dude who was filming it with his phone. Fortunately for that concerned citizen, the bullet only hit his leg, but the other dude is gone though. Now, this Hammond cat is worth 8 figures. He's from a family of entrepreneurs worth 9 figures. He had a family himself, and he still lost his mind because he felt disrespected. And I want to make it clear, I'm not victim blaming or excusing the perpetrator. I'm just reminding you of how quickly things can get dangerous if a person feels disrespected. The motto I live by is that good manners never make a situation worse, and bad manners never make it better. Now, if all of this fails, the person is too angry to be calmed down, or you can't run because you got people with you counting on you for protection, then you have to neutralize the aggressor. And my choice of words here was precise and intentional. If you knock a dude out who is posing a threat to your family, you'll probably be cool in the eyes of the law, even if he lands funny and unalive. But if you start stomping him while he's unconscious, you're probably going to have some problems. This isn't legal advice, and I'm not a lawyer, but you get the idea. I know more than a few people who got 2 to 4 years inside for an aggravated assault charge over fights they didn't start because they let it go on longer than they needed to after they got the best of the guy. Neutralize the risk to your loved ones in the most dispassionate way possible. You want to make it look like you are protecting yourself, not being a vigilante getting revenge. Street fights often turn into legal issues either because of the fight itself or because someone dies. There's no point in protecting the lives of your family only to be out of theirs because you wanted to act like Lionel Messi with the dude's head, even if you felt like he deserved it. And he probably did, to be honest. Now, while I just told you that things can get crazy anywhere, here are those habits that I promised you at the beginning that you can start developing right now to reduce your chances of ever regretting to learn how to fight or getting in good enough shape to run away from a confrontation. Tip number 1 is avoid anywhere where there's a possibility of running into drunk people in the wild. The Bureau of Justice Statistics reports that of the 11 million people victimized by violent crime each year, 1 in 4 are certain the person was intoxicated. And those are just the people who were sure because the signs were obvious, so it's likely higher. This tracks with another stat they deliver in the same report that says 5.3 million convicted offenders in prison. Out of them, 2 million of them say they were intoxicated while committing the violent crime. I put the link to the report in the description. It's from 1996, but it's worth checking out, and it only reaffirms my decision to get sober. The second tip is to avoid being in public gatherings in urban areas after 11 p.m. Now, if you're really cautious, you could just not go out after dark, but that's ridiculous and nearly impossible. Now, obviously, there are some people in some lines of work who can't avoid this, but the numbers are very clear here. Most of the violent crime that happens in the city happens between the hours of 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. After that, the junkies, jackers, and all other types of night stalkers appear to rest and recharge, as the safest part of the day is from 8 to 11 a.m., followed by 5 to 7 a.m. A link in the description on those stats too, just so you know I'm not trying to scare you into living like a monk. If you do those two things, you have to get pretty unlucky to find yourself in a street confrontation. If your lifestyle doesn't allow you the luxury of avoiding these situations and times a day, then perhaps you should watch this video. It gives you 6 simple but not easy steps to get on a path of real self-improvement that will open up more doors and give you more opportunities so you don't have to do something strange or change at odd hours of the night.